It just mathematically and logically does not make sense. The people who have cars are the people who can afford to take the $9 hit.
Oh, baby. All the way up north of the city. Not a car on the road.
It is I, Kevin Francis Clancy, a.k.a. KFC Barstool, king of the congestion pricing. That's right. I like congestion pricing for one reason and one reason only. I hate traffic. Now, if you don't live in New York City and you don't know what congestion pricing is, or you're still confused by it, let me break it down. The borough of Manhattan has been deemed the congestion relief zone. Anything 60th Street and below in Manhattan, if you drive your car in there, you get charged an additional $9. You can still drive on the major streets surrounding the borough, the FDR on the east side, the West Side Highway on the west side, any of the major streets around the New York City area, you don't get charged, but anytime you exit and enter the local streets, 60th and below, that's when you get charged. If you are a passenger vehicle or a motorcycle, you get charged once per day when you enter the congestion relief zone. If you are a bus or a delivery truck, you get charged every single time you enter the area. I hate goddamn traffic. And here I am thinking that if there's one thing the entire human race could rally around and come together on, it's that we all hate traffic and want to get rid of it. But stupid me. Because, of course, this has become a political issue. For what reason? I don't know why. I don't know why Donald Trump is involved. I don't know why people in Montana are worried about the fucking tolls in New York City. But here we are. It's somehow transformed into this left versus right argument where people are not looking at any facts and not looking at any of the good and just want to argue because they're either pro-Trump or anti-New York or whatever they've concocted in their head, whatever congestion pricing represents, they are against it. I've lived in New York my whole life. I was born in the Bronx. I now live in Westchester. I lived in Manhattan. I've lived in Hoboken. I've worked downtown, midtown, uptown. I have been traveling around this city, mass transit and cars my entire life. And the worst part about New York City has always been the gridlock. And now, it's gone. Overnight, it worked. The congestion pricing worked. And now it has been turned into this, it's bad for New York City, business is down, it's killing the little man, and I don't think people are looking at any of the facts. Now, to be fair, I don't know what facts are anymore. I don't know where to find them. I don't know who's a primary source. I don't know what you can rely upon. When something's politicized like this, the left, the right, this station, this outlet, that outlet, you can't trust anybody. But we've got to do it somewhere. And looking at some of the money generated, the traffic being down, and some of the stats in New York City right now, it's not this evil thing that the world is making it out to be. Now, we'll go through Governor Kathy Hochul made a PowerPoint presentation for Donald Trump when they met on congestion pricing, where she laid out all the stats in a very basic PowerPoint. I think they were like, make this for a fifth grader so that Donald Trump will get what we're talking about. Good, bad, up, down, myth. So it's as black and white as it gets. We'll get into those stats in a second. But it is a complicated issue, and I do understand that. And I understand that people look at me and they're like, you can afford it. You're not thinking about the little guy. You're being an asshole. I understand that that's how this comes across. However, I cannot believe that this is the issue that we are acting like is holding down the little man of New York City. I can't even believe congestion pricing really worked in the first place, because if you live in New York City, owning a car, paying for a lease, paying for insurance, and paying for parking in the most expensive city in the world, you are already living a luxury. That's already people that I would imagine can pay the extra $9 to go into the congestion zone. I could do it. I don't understand the people who can afford the car and do a daily commute on the road, but $9 is breaking the bank. Because as far as I know, when you're young, when you are not as well off, those are the people who take mass transit. Early in my life, I would never consider driving in New York City. I couldn't pay for the car. I certainly couldn't pay for parking. And so in the beginning, you take Metro North, you take the Long Island Railroad, you take New Jersey Transit, you take the subway. And eventually, if you get to a point where you're making enough money and you live far enough away, you drive in. That's just like kind of how the natural progression of someone working in New York City is. So if you are like a kid trying to commute and you can't afford this extra money, you probably should be taking mass transit anyway. I understand that there are probably some people who do drive for a living and this is hurting them. I'm not denying that there's nobody out there who's being negatively affected by this. But I inherently can't understand if you have a car, you're probably paying anywhere from like $500 to $1,000 a month parking on top of all your fees associated with having a car in the first place. When they say that 200,000 less cars were on the road, how could it possibly be that all the people being affected are the little man? I'm genuinely asking, because I don't think that there's enough of that Venn diagram of people who own cars, but people who the $9 will break the bank for them. So I'm genuinely trying to figure it out, because if it turns out that this just wiped out like 50,000 shitty ride shares, we got rid of a bunch of Ubers and Lyfts, which suck anyway now, by the way. You type in Uber XL and you get some shitty car that can barely fit 5 people. You type in Uber Black and you get some shitty Honda Civic. A bunch of people who don't know what they're doing, who are just trying to make an extra buck. If those people are affected, I don't give a fuck. To be honest, get them out of here. Encourage people to use mass transit and stop crowding the fucking streets with 50,000 Nissan Altimas from people who just want to be a cabbie. Don't want to do it. Leave it to the yellow cab drivers. Get the rest of these fucking ride shares out of here. If that's the case, I'm okay with it. But I'm genuinely trying to figure out if there is this huge swath of people who are like minimum wage workers and entry-level positions who are driving in and out of Manhattan every day, and that's the people who are carrying this burden, then I'll concede. It just mathematically and logically does not make sense. The people who have cars are the people who can afford to take the $9 hit. And it is working because there's so much less traffic. So there is a whole lot of cars not doing it anymore. Whether those are, I just want to figure out who those people are. As far as if you're commuting, it is now amazing. I mean, in and out from Westchester to Manhattan, 40 minutes. Things that used to be an hour and a half, hour 20, are now drastically cut down. So if you are in the city and you are against it, fine. But I think a lot of people are not involved in this world at all, and for some reason have fixated upon the tolls and the pricing of driving and commuting in a city that they do not live in, strictly to argue about politics. Now, let's go through. This is the PowerPoint that the governor presented to Donald Trump, where they go through some of the pricing. 1 month in, traffic is down 8%. I would take the over on that. I'm telling you, it's not the congestion zone is from 60th Street below in Manhattan. It affects traffic all the way up through Westchester. I live 45 minutes north of the city. The roads up there are wide open. The effect it has on the whole region, that I don't even know what is traffic, like what streets are they including for this 8%. But I'm telling you, as you go further up, it is still wide open streets everywhere. So I bet that number would be even higher. Vehicle speeds up 18%. School bus late arrivals down 48%. Yellow cab trips are up 10%. So everyone's saying that it's going to hurt the cabbies and hurt the ride shares. Well, it's up 10%. And 66% of frequent drivers support the program. So 2 out of 3 people are down with this. So again, when people want to politicize this, A, I don't know why the president is involved in the day-to-day business of New York City and their tolls. And B, especially if you're conservative and you're all about states' rights and you're all about less government interaction, and you find out that the majority of people, 2 out of every 3 like this, then what the fuck do you have a problem with? Just stay out of it and let the people who are living it, who the majority of it like it. And yes, does it suck for that 1/3? Of course. But in any sort of financial decision, political decision, social decision, there are going to be people who don't like it. It's not going to be perfect, but if the majority of people like it, I don't understand what the issue is in the first place. Continuing on by the numbers, congestion pricing. Now, here's where I don't know how much I believe all this. Now, they said that this month, New York City made $48.9 million based on the new toll. They expected it to be around like 52 million. So it actually came in lower than their projection. And they're saying all of this money will be put back into the city, that we will finally finish the 2nd Avenue subway. I've been here from the inception of the 2nd Avenue subway. I truly, genuinely do not believe it will be done by the time I'm left this planet. So I don't think any amount of money or any sort of program will ever finish the 2nd Avenue subway. But they say it'll lead to that. It'll lead to a big, new, beautiful Penn Station. It will lead to an interborough express to connect outer boroughs, which would be awesome. I can't say with confidence that if you give a whole bunch of money to any government body that it is going to be put back into society the way that they are claiming they're going to, or the correct way that they should. That's not a knock on New York or anything to do with congestion pricing. That's a knock on the real world we live in terms of politics. I wish that every tax dollar went to the appropriate place to better infrastructure and public works and all that. It should. And that's where this system would be beautiful if the whole thing worked. It's getting lower traffic, and it's also making the city better, improve the subways, improve the MTA, Metro North, all of that. That's what should happen. And if it does, it's like a double whammy. It's 2 birds with 1 stone. I just can't confidently say that that's what's going to happen, because I think a bunch of money goes to a bunch of people's pockets, because the world we live in is fucking corrupt. Continuing, 48% decrease in trip times from New Jersey. That is like the main effect of congestion pricing. People going in and out of the Holland Tunnel and the Lincoln Tunnel. We're talking like Friday night rush hour, and people are getting through the tunnel in under 5 minutes. This is like a dream, a literal like impossibility for people who have ever lived in New York City to tell me I can get out of the city or even back into the city on a nighttime rush hour, and I can do so in under 5 minutes. It is glorious. So New Jersey has really been benefiting from it. 50% decrease is crazy. Transit ridership is up 10%, Long Island Railroad, and 7% Metro North. So more people are taking that, because obviously there's less cars off the road. That makes sense. 50% fewer traffic injuries, so less people are getting hit by cars, because it's not a gridlocked shit show with 50,000 taxi cabs and ride shares who are just battling each other to move an extra 2 feet on the streets of New York. Traffic is down and business is up. Here is the big myth buster. 35.8 million people visited Manhattan business districts in January. That's up 1.5 million from 2024. Now, of course, that's not all directly congestion pricing. There's all sorts of shit. The economy has been up and down. We're still coming out of COVID in a lot of ways. There's a whole bunch of stuff that can go into increased visits to Manhattan. But the idea that this was going to kill it and end it, well, that just straight up didn't happen. So more people visiting Manhattan. Office leasing is up 24% and 61% year on year. Again, I think that's a little bit of a reach, because real estate prices and all that there's so much more that goes into it than the traffic. So I don't want to give them too much credit on that one. 4.6% growth in visitation. I think that means, judging by the picture, that people just kind of walking through the streets now are popping in to small businesses, compared to 1.6% outside the zone. So people are driving around outside the zone. You don't stop in at a local store and do some shopping or pop in and get a meal. When you are walking around the streets of Manhattan now, that's what's happening. It's actually good for business. And when you were living outside the city and you're like, hey, let's go in for that Broadway show, and you got to pack up the kids, pack up your family, and drive in, and you see that it's an hour and a half to get there, people don't do it. When you see that it's 45 minutes, they do. And I know that it is counterintuitive for people to think we are taxing people to drive into the city, so that must mean less people are going down there. That's not the case. Less cars are going in there, but the same amount, if not more people, are still in the city. And those people are not just sitting in their car in the middle of the street in gridlock traffic for an extra hour. They are walking around. They are taking the subway. They are seeing sites and businesses. They are stopping for a bite. They are stopping in for shopping. So turns out, who knew, that just sitting in a car in traffic is not good for business, and people being in and about the city is good for business. Less cars, not less people. The congestion pricing will hurt Broadway, again, because now all of a sudden we are all champions of Broadway. Well, Broadway attendance was up 17% as soon as congestion pricing took effect. So there that one fucking goes. And again, if you're thinking about the people who are going to Broadway, people who are paying ticket prices for, Phantom of the Opera, Wicked, Jersey Boys, Hamilton. These are not the people who are like, never mind, we're not going anymore because that $9. They're spending a fucking $1,000 on Broadway seats. Somehow we have turned this into the plight of, people living below the poverty line, where we're talking about cars and Broadway. These are not the people who are affected by this. I had someone on social media arguing with me, well, have you thought about the parking garages? Yeah. Here's what I have to think about the parking garages. Fuck them. Fuck the parking garages, who have been eating off of the average New Yorker forever, because, by the way, there has always been a premium on driving your car into Manhattan. They've been charging no less than $500 a month for parking, and that's if you're on the outskirts of Manhattan. You want to park at your apartment, midtown, in the heart of the city, in some of these popular areas. You're talking about $1,000 a month for parking. If those people are taking a hit, I can sleep at night. Fuck you guys. They've been jacking up the price on that forever because they know how much people driving in the city can usually afford that stuff. And if they're the ones taking a hit, I am A-okay with that. Icon parking, go fuck yourself, okay? If those are the losers of this, if a whole bunch of ride shares and a whole bunch of parking garages take a hit, I'm sorry, I'm okay with that. And what else do we have here? Yeah, this is now just like the kind of the bullshit. We're going to make a New York fast and strong and beautiful. It's like, yeah, fine. Less cars, business is fine. Again, I'm sure there could be some sort of amendments made to the rule. Maybe there are delivery people, truck drivers, first responders. Yes, there are, I'm sure, instances where this is not cool, not good. We can maybe figure that out. Also, if there is issues, but it's just not a grand majority of people, and the rest of it is making money for the city and better for everyone else, from pedestrians to regular commuters, again, there are always going to be some people who are negatively affected by any change, and that sucks for you. But until I can see evidence, and again, the people I see complaining are people who don't live in New York City, people who are Donald Trump fans, people who are anti-New York, and they are right wing, and they think that this is somehow the plight of the Pizzagate reptilian pedophiles who are just doing this to line their pockets. Those are the people who are arguing and complaining. Again, I took mass transit my entire life until I was in a spot in my life where I could afford it and basically needed to. I'm living in Westchester. I need to drive in at certain times. I don't want to be on the schedule of Metro North. I can afford it. I can afford the extra $9. I will still continue to do so. And there's a lot of people out there that can do that. And if you are right at that level where it's too much for you, that's a personal decision that I think you have to make, but it's not one of tyranny from the government trying to steal your money. It's like, this city functions better if we do it this way. And if you want to participate in it by continuing to drive, you got to pay a little bit more money. And I don't think, some people are like, oh, it's not $9, it's $13.50 if you don't have Easy Pass. If you don't have Easy Pass in the year of our Lord 2025, again, this is not a them problem, it's a you problem. These are all things that it's not a city designed for cars. It is not a city that should be in constant gridlock because of a million ride shares and a million people who don't want to take mass transit. If mass transit is better and more efficient because of money from this, all of it is kind of a circular, self-fulfilling thing. And the people who can afford to still pay that premium will, and the people who can't don't. But it's not this hotly political issue that, well, it is now because Donald Trump has made it that way and people have decided to turn it into that. It is just a civil engineering decision that was made based on how fucking crowded and congested the city has been. And they found a way to fix it while it also improves, theoretically, improves everything else. And it worked instantly. Now, if there were some facts that I find out this is not true, and I find out that it is the vast majority of the average working man who is being completely fucked, I will concede. But right now, it seems to be good and better all around for everyone involved, whether you're in the car, on the streets, commuting into the city, living in the city, having businesses in the city, Broadway, except for the parking. Oh my God, how will we ever survive if the parking garages? Oh no, the parking garages at Broadway. Get the fuck out of here.